Hello and welcome to Exclusive Interview, coming to you from 84 TV Radio Abuja, Nigeria. My name is Stanley Bentu. Now recently, Nigeria took receipt of about 4 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines, and this was through the COVAX initiative. Now, while we are very excited that Nigerians will be getting vaccinated, and the response has been quite positive, with over 2 million people registering to be vaccinated, it raises other concerns about critical things in our health sector. It once again raised the question of why Nigeria is so reliant on developed countries for solutions that it has the capacity to provide internally. So what is happening to our pharmaceutical sector? How well are we doing? What investments have we been making there? That is what I would like to find out, and in a little bit, I'll be having a sit down with the Director General of the National Institute of Pharmaceutical Research and Development, Dr. Obi Adigwe. But before we do that, let's have a look at this report. Director General, it's a pleasure to have you on Exclusive Interview.
Thank you for having me.
So the pharmaceutical industry is quite significant, and I think recent experience has proved that. But what is actually the size of the industry, and who are the major players in it?
So I'll start global and then I'll come local. Global pharmaceutical industry is worth somewhere around $1.2, $1.3 trillion. Coming down to Africa, the data becomes a bit sketchy, but where various stakeholders have indicated that it's somewhere between 35 and $50 billion. And then coming down to Nigeria, again, the data quality has some issues. We're looking at somewhere between $1.3 to $2 billion. And the key players will depend on the setting that you're looking at. In the pharmaceutical manufacturing value chain, you have pharmaceutical importation of finished products at the very end in terms of sophistication. That's the least sophisticated end of the value chain. So countries that don't have a lot of capacity import all their medications. And then at the very other end of the spectrum, where you have the highest sophistication, that's where you have pharmaceutical research and development. So in between, you have things like manufacturing of finished products. You have things like original R&D in between. You have things like development and articulation of things like active pharmaceutical ingredients. So depending on the setting that you're talking about, the stakeholders could be either or all of all these various actors. So in Nigeria, for instance, you have a significant amount of pharmaceutical importers. I think somewhere between 500 and 700 pharmaceutical importing companies. And then you have about 160, 170 local pharmaceutical manufacturers. In a place like India or Bangladesh, for instance, that particular pyramid will be inverse. You'd have them exporting more and doing more manufacturing so that they can take care of their system as well as earn forex by exporting to places like Europe, the Americas, and Africa.
So Nigeria, where do we stand in this food chain?
That's a difficult question. We're somewhere around the middle. So we do have some capacity. Local manufacturing has been in Nigeria for quite a while now, several decades easily. And some manufacturing is undertaking in Nigeria, like I mentioned, about 160, 170 companies manufacturing. But there is still a significant amount of importation. Somewhere about 60 to 70% of the products used in Nigeria are imported. Whereas various policies that we've put in place going back to 2 decades ago have argued that we should be manufacturing the majority of the medicines that we use in Nigeria. And indeed, if all the key factors align, we should be manufacturing all our medicines and even exporting.
So what are those key factors that have prevented us from producing drugs enough for ourselves and even exporting?
A number of them. Policy is one. Political will is another one. The capacity of the industry itself, access to infrastructure, power, roads, there are quite a number of them. But rather than listing them for you, let me tell you what has been going on and the changes that have been made recently. So in terms of policy, for instance, up until 2016, policy was that all imported pharmaceuticals came in at no taxes, whereas the equipment and some of the raw materials that are required to manufacture medicines in Nigeria, you had to pay some tax for. So in essence, it meant that it was more expensive to manufacture than it was to import. In 2016, based on our engagement with the government, some of that policy started to change. So 4 categories of medicines, antibiotics, antimalarials, hematinics, and alkaloids were put on an import adjustment tax list. So what it meant was that a tax of 20% was put on them, which made it, which now gave the advantage to local manufacturers that were manufacturing those categories of medicines. That single policy led to a double-digit growth in some of the areas of the local market. Close to 15 new factories were built, and obviously for every new factory that is built, jobs are created, more capacity is brought into the system. And I think in the first year or so, I can't remember the data exactly, an inflow of somewhere between $50 million and $100 million could be attributed to that direct policy intervention. So that's the kind of thing that policy can do. And that is directly linked with political will. Political will, again, I'll give you another example. Executive Order number 4, Section 3F, which was put in by this particular administration. As you're aware, I think we have about 10 executive orders that have been put in place since 2015 or so. Executive Order number 3, Section 4F specifically, says that all MDAs, so all government agencies, should prioritize the procurement of locally manufactured pharmaceuticals. Those are the kind of things that political will can bring to the table and help grow the local market.
But what about capacity? I mean, can we actually meet that demand of the market? And do we have other outlets so that we can attract foreign income into the country?
Absolutely, and I say it without any prevarication. I happen to be privileged to have been the executive secretary of the Pharmaceutical Manufacturers Group of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria. And there are very few human beings alive that have visited the amount of factories that I have visited in this part of the world, because I was a hands-on executive secretary. And I can tell you categorically, we are not working our factories as hard as we should. There are certain factories that are tooled to work for 24 hours, and they barely do 8 hours in a day. So in terms of installed capacity, there is the capacity to manufacture a lot of these products to meet local consumption. Where there might be an issue is if you say the capacity to manufacture certain sophisticated pharmaceuticals, that may be where there is a technical capacity gap. But that can also be addressed by policy and political will. And I can tell you this, based on a personal experience. Prior to 2017, Nigeria literally imported all its vaccines. When the meningitis outbreak came through, myself and a few colleagues were one of the people in the industry that spoke out. I gave several press conferences, and we spoke out stridently for Nigeria to become a local vaccine manufacturing nation. And the government of the day listened and signed, I think it was a 6 billion naira agreement with a local manufacturer. Now, the reason why I can tell you categorically that policy can drive inflow for technical capacity is before that discussion was, before that agreement was made, on behalf of a local manufacturer, I engaged one of the biggest vaccines manufacturers in India. And, because we're at the same conference, they listened to me, but after that, they ignored me. But the minute the Nigerian government signed that 6 billion naira agreement and made a policy statement that they were now looking towards local production of vaccines, guess what? The same people that had been ignoring me a few weeks later suddenly remembered my phone number and my email addresses, and it was off the hook. So if we had followed up at that point in time, what it means is that big vaccines manufacturer in India, based on a policy decision of government, would have been ready to transfer the technology to Nigeria. And based on that technology transfer, the capacity will be built.
Well, thank you very much for that those revealing bits and pieces of information. But there is something that I've always wondered about. What about acceptability of locally produced drugs? We know that Nigeria has struggled with consumption of our products from our industries. But there's a curious thing when it comes to pharmaceuticals. There is a large demand for these local herbal specialists that go around selling drugs. I always found it curious because you're buying things from a stranger who does not particularly look well manicured, and yet, there's a look of suspicion towards some drugs that are produced within Nigeria. In your experience, what has this been? How is the acceptability of pharmaceutical products that are Nigerian?
There are two facets to your question. One is the acceptability of phytomedicines sold by herbal practitioners, and the other is the acceptability of conventional medicines manufactured in Nigeria. And I'll take them one by one. The acceptability of phytomedicines sold by phytomedicinal practitioners or herbal practitioners. You're quite right that it's popular. The data says that in certain settings, especially in rural areas, up to 70% of the population use herbal practitioners as their first line when they go to seek healthcare intervention. What we've done as a government agency is to now begin to add value to that relationship. So obviously, a significant amount of the population already access those guys. But, these guys, despite the fact that the knowledge they're using to produce these herbal remedies is of value, however, there are still weaknesses. So number one is that the knowledge has been passed down from generation to generation. And so it's word of mouth. How validated is that knowledge? And what we've done is that we've now developed a program where we've gone round to about 10 states, and we aim to do all 36, where we are training these herbal practitioners to understand the value of documenting their practices, to understand the value of getting those products to undergo the rigorous tests that they need to undergo in order to become regulated products, okay? So we're teaching them how to undertake the various steps towards getting a NAFDAC listing. A NAFDAC listing means that, in the very least, the product that you're giving people is safe. It will not kill that person. So that's, on the one hand, what we're doing. And on the other hand, recently, a few months ago, based on the engagement that has undergone based on the engagement that had been undertaken, there is a board now. There is now a registration body for herbal medicinal practitioners. So the two legs of the discussion, regulating the practice and regulating the products, can now align to ensure that products from that particular division of healthcare provision are standardized. So that's for herbal products. Now, the more interesting one is the the conventional products that are manufactured in Nigeria. And for the life of me, I don't understand why someone will go to a pharmacy shop and not request for a made in Nigeria medicine. I'll tell you a secret. My two daughters were born at the Leeds General Infirmary in England.
In the United Kingdom.
And for all the period I was living in England, doing my master's, my PhD, and all the other things I did there, I would always buy medicines from Nigeria and take to England. That is the level of confidence that I have in made in Nigeria medicines. You don't have any better value. You don't have any better value. And there is empirical evidence that supports that medicines that are made in Nigerian factories are of the highest value. I mean, logically, let's look at it. On the one hand, you have people making medicines in factories that are in your backyard. NAFDAC and PCN, who are the regulators, can literally, within 30 minutes, visit your factory. And if you're doing anything untoward in your factory, they will close it down. Now, compare this to someone who is manufacturing a product in Asia or in America. That product is still regulated by NAFDAC, but it would take NAFDAC a visa, a flight ticket, and relevant permissions to visit that factory. So who is likely to forge their products? So for a long while now, I've told people, when it comes to medicines and cables, buy Nigerian, you cannot go wrong.
That's quite an endorsement.
Absolutely.
Of Nigerian industries. Well, finally, my question would be concerning the COVID-19 adventure that we have had, or misadventure, if you may call it that. We've saw what happened with vaccines. Well, recently Nigeria just received, I think it's about 4 million doses, but we had to wait. I mean, nowhere have I ever felt more vulnerable than to think that we have to just wait until we receive these vaccines. When will we ever get to a point where we can develop our own vaccines? And so that maybe we can be players instead of pawns.
Yeah. If your heart was broken, Stanley, mine was shattered. COVID opened a lot of people's eyes. But the argument that people put forward for us to look inwards, which they suddenly woke up to because of COVID, people like me woke up to it 10 years ago. You know, I took my master's at the University of Edinburgh, I took my PhD at the University of Leeds, and I turned down great opportunities to come back to Nigeria to do exactly what I'm doing, because I know the potential that we have in this country. And if you go online, and you check my pedigree, I didn't wait for COVID to start arguing for us to manufacture vaccines in Nigeria. Close to a decade ago, I was making that argument. When meningitis came up, we made that argument. There are at least 4 or 5 seminal interviews I had given before COVID came up, before people knew what COVID was, arguing that we needed to manufacture vaccines in Nigeria. And the reason isn't far-fetched. Myself and a few colleagues in PMG-MAN, especially Dr. Oke-Akpa, articulated the concept of medicine security, which argued that unless the people are able to determine how their medicines are produced and distributed, that particular group of people will not be able to ensure sustainable access to high quality, affordable and timely health care for their citizenry. And embedded in that particular concept were things like job creation, were things like capacity building, were things like knowledge transfer, were things like revenue generation for people along the value chain, from the farmers to the processors, to the manufacturers, to the packaging, to the logistics, across the value chain. Local manufacturing is an argument that sells itself, except in places like Nigeria. About 4 or 5 years ago, one of the saddest days of my life, we were seated in a meeting that was called in the Federal Secretariat. And we had a room filled with people from international organizations and development partners and other related organizations. We pitched medicine security as the philosophy that should underpin why the Ministry of Health should procure the majority of its pharmaceuticals from local manufacturers. And we gave all the benefits, including health security, medicine security, job creation, all these things that I've listed out. It was and this was a room that had about 40 people. Obviously, this was pre-COVID. This was a room that had about 40 people. The only gentleman that spoke in favor of our concept was a Senegalese gentleman in his 60s, who said, and I quote him, that he has confidence in Nigerian medicines, that for the period he had been heading the United Nations organization for 4 years, that every time he goes to the pharmacy shop to buy his antihypertensive medicines, he always requests for made in Nigeria medicines, and he has never gone wrong. The remaining 39, out of the ones that spoke, all of them argued in favor of importing medications from where they were sourced cheaply, because it could provide the highest amount of healthcare for the most amount of people. Where are those people now? COVID has shut everybody up.
That is one major challenge. So Nigeria should venture into development of vaccines.
Absolutely. Okay. I mean, the government has taken all the right steps. Government has taken all the right steps. Like I told you, there's an agreement that's ongoing. There's a company that's been formed, and I know that company has started making some moves in the right direction. Government has also backed up, has also put its money where its mouth is and released an additional amount of funds to support local manufacturing. Okay? But where I have a problem sometimes with government, and I may be vilified for saying this, but sometimes we don't move as fast as we should do. Right? Sometimes we don't move as fast as we should.
How much investment has the government made?
If in terms of local manufacturing of vaccines, this particular administration must have put in somewhere between 15 to 20 billion naira, if I'm not mistaken. And I think this is the first time in decades any government has made this level of investment in local manufacturing of vaccines. But not just local manufacturing of vaccines. There's another area that this government has made some investment, which is perhaps underappreciated. And that area is the recognition of the place of science in national policy making. Okay? And I'll use the COVID organics preparation as to illustrate this point. Mm-hmm. When that product was being advertised by the president of Madagascar, I know countries where their presidents were sending planes to pick up jet loads of the product, and people had started using it. But in this country, the leaders frankly said that, it's a good innovation, but we will let science lead the way. Mm-hmm. And they said, we will not use this product unless NIPRID carries out the tests for this product. Okay? And what happened? That product came here. I mean, NIPRID wasn't the only agency that analyzed that product, but it is a thing of great, great pride. I think it must be one of my proudest professional moments that NIPRID undertook that categorical analysis first in the world, and our findings went viral in English and in French. And you don't need to take my word for it, go on the internet. We were the first to say that this particular product in this format does not do A, B, C, and D. However, it contains GHK, and it may be able to do X, Y, Z. Mm. That went viral, and it is in the labs that you walked past when you were coming up here that work was done. Wow. It is the people that you said hello to when you were strolling in here. Those were the world-class scientists that did the work. So a lot of times, sometimes in this country, we don't appreciate the expertise that we have. Mm. We don't.
I think I will take a closer look at them as I leave the building.
You will. You should do. You should do.
Thank you very much, Dr. Adibe. It's been such a pleasure and very enlightening speaking to you on Exclusive.
Yeah, it's been good to chat with you, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to Nigerians through your platform.
And we wish you the best of luck.
Thank you.
There's a wind of change blowing over Nigeria, and it's coming from the Tertiary Education Trust Fund. If you want to find out how TED Fund is bringing the Nigerian government, industry, and the academia together to drive a new knowledge economy, tune in to this station every Wednesday at 8 p.m. for TED Fund, The Paradigm Shift. It's informative, it's innovative, and it's exciting. TED Fund, The Paradigm Shift. Proudly produced by 84 TV Radio.
Hello there. Welcome to another edition of the program Total Woman on 84 TV Radio. On the program, we celebrate women. Women have a long history of involvement in Nigeria's development. Women are key contributors to the development of any country. Yet, women are unequally represented.
We are nurturers, we coach, we mentor. If you can raise a home, you can raise a foundation.
Everything starts in the mind.
You don't lead by sitting down. You lead by going to search for information.
For women, we just have to keep doing what we know how to do best.
Women are very creative. If you give a woman a lemon, she will return back to you a lemonade.
So this is the right place to be for information, education, and empowerment. My name is Mute Olori. Keep watching AD4 TV Radio.
Well, I guess it goes without saying that Dr. Obiadigwe is very passionate about his work. He believes in Nigeria and its capabilities. I wish that that feeling was infectious enough that it would bring all of Nigeria together so that we can explore all of our innermost talents. I think that Nigeria has a massive opportunity here. We can become the world leader in the provision of treatments and cures for conditions like Ebola, malaria, and other diseases that affect sub-Saharan Africa. We certainly have the best minds in the world that have the capability to do all of that. All that remains is for us to get our acts together and to make the right investments. Well, that's it on Exclusive Interview today. Until we come your way again next time, thank you for stopping by.